Right, hello everyone. I got this little idea for this little video from Lizzie at Rose and Jones. Check her out on YouTube. Basically, it was kind of what along that lines of what inspires us. But then I thought, what about all these people we watch on YouTube? It's just about YouTube, this one, and it's split into two bits. First, I'll do the guys, and then I'll do the women on YouTube who've influenced me. And the twist on it is what fragrance do I think represents them? So not what fragrance will be their favourite fragrance, but what I think best embodies them, who they are to me, how I see them, how I envisage them. Obviously, not going down the pub with all these people, so I don't know them personally and everything, but how they come across to me and how they've kind of inspired me to do what I do, etc. So anyway, I'll get straight on to it. I'll also try to do less hand waving this time. So anyway, first up is Fragmental, or Chris. Now, as I've mentioned many times, he's the first guy that I tuned into YouTube to, quite accidentally obviously, just looking for something about a fragrance. Chris was the first guy I kind of jumped up and I started watching. So that's how I got into him, and that was nearly a year and a half ago now. It doesn't seem that long, but yeah. So the fragrance I've picked for Chris is, of course, Dior Homme. And Chris probably does like this one. And the reason I've picked this is specifically because this is the original from this fantastic line. And obviously Chris is my original. Not just that, this is such an elegant, classy, wonderful fragrance, and it isn't like all the others. Like Chris isn't like all the other reviewers. There's a lot of difference about him, there's a lot of personality like there is to this, and God, it sounds dramatic, doesn't it? Chris changed my world, this changed the world of fragrance. And it has a certain level of professionalism and class, if you like, but at the same time it's still got a touch of fun. It's still a very approachable fragrance. It's not something that would push people away, despite it being actually a fairly complex fragrance as well. It does seem on the surface to be quite, now we think it's quite normal, but that's because this changed the game. Like Chris, I think, has influenced a lot of especially the British reviewers. So yes, I'm waffling on and on and on. And also added to this is that if Chris was discontinued on YouTube, there'd be a big massive kick-off, there'd be mayhem in the streets. Probably not that extreme, but like this one, it would leave a wound amongst the line, and if a new person came and tried to replace him with the same name but was actually a totally different fragrance and nothing like this and had none of the class and brilliance of this, then it wouldn't be accepted. Well, yes, that's my number one. Well, they're not in order, but as Chris was my number one, my first, Dior Homme, the original. Okay, next up we have Purple Gourmand, and that is for Steve Frags to Riches. Now Steve Frags to Riches, like a bit like Chris previously, is kind of a bit of a special reviewer to me. He's the guy who kind of pushed me into doing whatever it is I do on Instagram, just to shut me up mainly. But why this fragrance for Steve? Well, basically it's another one of them. It's quite understated, not many people know about it. More people should know about it because it's brilliant, like Steve's channel, to be fair. It's also on the surface, like Steve, a basic bitch, quite simple, just a sweet gourmand. But actually, if you scratch below the surface with this and spend some time with this fragrance, you get to understand it's more than just a sweet fragrance. It changes, it evolves, it gets better as it goes on. Yeah, I'm giving Steve a big head. But it is so much more than you think, and it's fun. You know, it entertains you, does what it's supposed to do. Steve's channel does what it's supposed to do. It gives you all you need, and also just has a laugh about it, doesn't take life too seriously. This isn't a serious fragrance. It's never too much, it just gives you just about the right amount. It's not a beast performer, it doesn't shout across the street, and that's what Steve's reviews are, no bells and whistles. You're just learning about fragrances, which is all you want. And also this kind of, it follows you around. I'm not saying that Steve follows you around, but he gave me a lot of support, and I know he supports a lot of other people, and you can ask him anything, you can have a laugh with him, and much like this fragrance, it's there for you when you need it, let's put it that way. Okay, that was Steve from Franks to Riches and Purple Gourmand from Pocket Sense. Now then, next up, as you can see, is Burberry Brit, and this is one of them really understated, never gets any hype, never gets attention, but it is one of my favourite fragrances, and it is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I know this is only a 30ml, but you can see I'm burning through it. I love this in the summer, but anyway, that's by the by. So who does this represent? This represents Scott, the Centurion on YouTube, and Scott is someone who's been going a long time, much longer than you think, and he's quite understated. He's turned things up a bit, he's got some flashy effects and that now, that looks really good, but basically all Scott is a pure gentleman. He has a lot of knowledge, he puts it across in a very understandable way, his channels are entertaining, they're fun, they're informative, he tries a lot of new things, and I think this does represent him, because it has that kind of, for me anyway, like that English rose, that powdery rose running through it, which represents all that elegance and that gentlemanliness. It's so approachable. Again, it seems so simple and so warm and refreshing and lovely. And you know, I'm checking myself when I'm going through these people, not kissing the backsides. I'm just saying which kind of fragrance represents them, and I think that Scott pretty much would be Burberry Brit. Now this one, if you do follow me on here, and you have for a while, you'll kind of know that this is quite an interesting story behind this, and a strange fragrance for me. It was one, basically, I ordered Le Nuit de l'Homme in Longtons, I ended up getting the original L'Homme Longtons. But anyway, so who does this represent? This represents Tony Predicted. And why does it represent Tony Predicted? Well, because obviously I tuned into Tony's channel by mistake and ended up getting stuck with him. Not really, obviously. But for me, now this has grown on me, and I do really love it. It is such a warm and friendly, dependable kind of fragrance. And because of that sweetness, it's got a real gorgeous fun side to it. It's fun side, it's sweet, it's elegant, but at the same time as this elegance, it is fun. It's just gorgeous, and it's also a bit different. It's not like everything else out there. Yes, it is more like an upgraded version of the original L'Homme. It's got a lot more to it, a lot more depth, and Tony does have a lot more depth. He does, maybe on the surface again, because he seems so easy and approachable. There's a lot more to Tony. He has quite, again, a generous, giving nature, and this fragrance again stays with you all day, and it's there for you, and it's an easy throw on. I mean, Tony, his reviews are basically what he describes, exactly what you get. They're not over the top, they're not too complicated, they're not too technical, they just give you everything you want. And again, Tony's one of these guys who's quite big at being supportive within the groups, and I imagine if you ever had any questions about fragrances, Tony does deal with the more designer fragrances like this, but he is starting to move more into the niche. But he knows loads about designer fragrances. He knows stuff about things I don't have a clue about. Tony's got his finger on the pulse anyway, and that's why this fragrance, Yves Saint Laurent L'Homme L'Intense, represents Tony Predicted. Now in each of the 5 there are 2 kind of wild cards. Just 2 people I'm just kind of starting to get to know a bit, I guess. But they have quite similar tastes, and their material, their content really does push me to, one of them you'll see in the female side, push me to try new things and be bolder. And this guy, just, what can I say about him, he's just a funny, warm guy with the most amazing content. I'm not funny, I know I'm not funny, but this guy doesn't have to try, and he's really kind of amusing. His videos are fantastic, goes to so much effort with kind of props and characters, and he just doesn't take it all too seriously. And that's kind of something I hope I get from him, is just not to take it all too seriously. I mean, but yes, it is Brandon, who is Da Vinci's Alchemist over on YouTube, so check him out. Absolutely amazing, like I say. So for Brandon, why have I picked Jasmine Narcotique from Aaron Terence Hughes? That's because, let's face it, on the surface, Brandon's quite a bad boy. He's got, you know, he used to be a rock and roll lifestyle. However, he's very complicated. Excuse the ice cream van in the background. Right, it's gone. I don't think it's selling ice cream either. I think this is probably what it's selling. But anyway, get back to this. Brandon is yeah, he's a rock and roller. He's lived a wild life, you can tell that. However, he's much more complicated than that. Now this, obviously, is based around the note of cocaine. So on the surface you think this is just a kind of drug thing. This is the most niche fragrance I think I own. It isn't like a yucky, over the top, too much narcotic cocaine. There's the jasmine in this. Now jasmine can have that smell anyway, that kind of edge, but the jasmine still adds a bit of beauty and niceness to this, which again, of course, is Brandon. Obviously he's a nice bloke, a very nice bloke. Again, he's very supportive as he's growing. He helps other people around him. He's amusing, he's funny. So that one, Jasmine Narcotique, is for Brandon, and he's Da Vinci's Alchemist. There is one final person who's not in the list, but is in the list because I wanted to mention him, but I knew he'd hate being in a list like this because he doesn't like that sort of thing. But I'm going to mention him anyway, and that's Nigel, 2 cents worth. And the reason this fragrance represents him is this fragrance represents everything Nigel's about. Is unique. It's kind of under the radar. It's not flashy despite the gold top. You don't hear a lot about Daniel Hossier's fragrances. Don't know why, because they're wonderful. And it's particularly this one, Quetzali, because it has a gorgeous lime note. It's not your everyday lime though. It's something that I think Daniel Hossier does quite well. But lime is Nigel's favourite note, and I know I said I wouldn't be a fragrance about what they'd love. It's a fragrance that represents them, but I do think this represents Nigel perfectly well. It's well made. All his videos have a lot of thought and a lot of time in them. This too. This is such a unique, complex, very layered, totally different idea that nobody's done before. You'd have to check this out yourself, but it's got, to me, it's got a touch of avocado. It probably doesn't, but I can smell it because I think it's in there. And it's got, like I say, the limes. It's got gorgeous incense, and it's supposed to represent ancient Mexican people and ancient Mexico at that time. And I think, obviously don't know what it smelled like in Mexico because I wasn't alive then. I've never been to Mexico either, but I imagine this does embody that whole idea. And that's Quetzali from Daniel Hossier, with a person who's in the list but not in the list, Nigel, 2 cents worth.